Hello, Professor Lynn.
Hi.
I know you have a lot of videos to watch, so we're going to try to keep this entertaining. Hi, Michelle.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing very well.
Good. So thank you for volunteering to do this with me.
Absolutely. Not a problem.
Great. So you are going through the program, and
Yeah.
you're going to be in this position in a year. So hopefully I can set a good example for you.
You already are.
Oh, yay. See, take a note. So what is it, and do you mind if I take notes
I
as
do
we go
not.
through?
Absolutely.
Great. What is the topic you want to talk about today?
Well, I started a new job recently, and I'm having a little trouble with the corporate culture. And so we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Talk about, as a new employee, what position do you take when you encounter a culture, that is a lot different than what you anticipated?
Okay.
And as a result of that, you have actually encountered a workplace bully.
Ooh.
What do you do? Of course, I have my own ideas of what to do.
Right.
But just looking for some coaching in that area.
Okay.
Mhm.
So can you give me a little bit more detail about, like, an example of a situation of how the workplace bully is impacting you and what's going on?
Sure. So just a little background. I'm a project manager, and it's a newly created role. This company has not had a project manager for their internal business systems before, only project managers for their outsourced services, right?
Okay.
And so this particular person interviewed for the job and did not get it. And so they brought an external person in. And so that's the source of the conflict.
Yeah.
And so she relies on me now for to lead projects for the system that she works on. And so just a little bit of a challenge in that.
Okay, but she's not. You're not reporting to
I am not
her. She's a
reporting to her.
colleague.
She's a colleague.
Okay.
Her title technically is higher than mine, but she's still a colleague.
Okay. And what types of things is she doing?
One of the things I'm encountering is the way she communicates occurrences is totally different than what actually happened. So I have to document, over-document, re-document. And so project managers are accustomed to documenting. That's part of what we do, who we are. But with her, I have to not only cross the T and dot the I, I've got to go behind that and do even more. And so it increases my responsibilities maybe threefold because of the amount of documentation that I have to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you most like to accomplish? What would be a win at the end of this session? Would be for you to walk away with what?
I like to explore strategies. Like, we're learning a lot of different strategies in class, and I would like to kind of bounce some of those strategies or ideas off of you and talk through those so that in the end, I utilize what I'm learning here more effectively to interact with her, to deal with her. I can't control her. I can only control me. And so I want to be more effective on my end.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you're starting from a really aware space.
I'm trying to be, yeah.
So that's really good. So what are some of the ideas that you've come up with so far on what you can do for this situation?
Well, originally I was a little hesitant to give her the direct feedback I needed to give her because I'm new, not out of fear or anything like that. But when you're still trying to figure out all of the personalities in the organization, for me, I'd rather be a little more low-key at first, but she requires that I'm not that way. And so one of the strategies I decided to do is just continue to use what we're learning in class now, which is the feedback method. And so looking at the situation, the behavior, and the impact, and making sure I'm very clear in my communication with her when I'm giving feedback. And then not only give it verbally, but now, even though it's recommended that we don't do email, for this situation, because it could progress to something else, I have to come back and document it after I have those conversations with her.
When you say it's not recommended that you do emails, that somebody in the company
in this program.
In the program, okay.
We're saying typically you wouldn't, do an email, but when it's a situation that could escalate somewhere else, you need to have documentation for that.
Yeah. Okay, so you have the feedback method, and what's something else that you could do?
Well, I need to make sure that my boss is constantly informed of things that could impact her. One of the things I definitely want to make sure of is that I don't make any missteps that could negatively impact her. So I don't I don't need to take to her the specific details and all the nuances. That's what she hired me for. If I can't handle that, I don't need to have the job. But I do need to make sure I let her know of anything that could impact the department overall, and just make sure she's informed. So I'm trying my best to do a very good job at that. Document, over-document, re-document, for those kinds of things.
Okay. So you have the feedback method. You have making sure your boss is informed. What are some other options at your disposal?
It's gotten progressively worse over the last few weeks, and so I've been considering if I need to do take it to the next step and go to HR. So that's why another reason why I'm making sure I'm documenting everything. What I want to do is make sure that I am not misinterpreting something, right? Because sometimes it could be, we're different people, different experiences, different backgrounds, and so it just may be a personality conflict. I don't think it is, but I always want to give the person the benefit of the doubt as long as I can before I do anything else. But my next step would be HR.
Okay. You mentioned that you don't think it's misinterpreting. What do you think it is?
I think that she's terribly frustrated that things didn't go the way she thought they would go, and that she wants to prove that I can't do the job. That's what I think it is.
Okay. So let's keep spitballing. What are some other things that you could do? You've mentioned feedback. You've mentioned keeping your boss informed, taking it to HR.
Right.
I mean, anything's on the table. Crazy, not crazy, whatever.
Well, just in terms of my daily routine, I always strive to do my best anyway. But in this particular situation, I need to shine more than ever. And not out of ego or anything like that, but it's important to me that my boss not second guess her hire, her hiring me. And the way, it's a smaller organization, it's not a huge company, privately owned company. And so in that, the culture is almost like you're being, I hate to use this word, but almost like you're being hazed, like in a sorority or fraternity or something coming in. And it's not nasty. It's almost like it's subtle nuances, and any behavior outside of those subtleties, you are outside of it, outside of the group or whatever. But that doesn't concern me. I've only been there 3 months. That'll all work itself out. What concerns me is making sure that I can deliver a quality product to my customers as I navigate this young lady and anyone that's working with her.
So let's focus a little bit. Let's take a look at the relationship you have with her.
Okay.
And the feedback, because you've talked about the boss and you've talked about HR, and those seem like external to the relationship between the two of you. So let's get some more ideas about options of what you could do in your relationship with her.
Okay.
Because you seem to have some insight into her point of view. So if you were in her shoes, what do you think that you would want the other person to be doing?
Well, if I were her, her expectation of me is that I deliver any upgrades or changes to the system in a timely manner. That's her basic requirement of me. So I would expect, if I were her, I would expect to get just that, and she is getting that. In addition to that, she doesn't know that I know about her applying for the role. She doesn't know that I know that. I would expect common decency, those kinds of things. But we've only known each other 60 days, so what other expectations can you have at this point? Common decency, and the work is done well, and she gets those things. One of the other things I tried to do at first was, again, I want to make sure that it's not me, coming into a new place, trying to fit in, those kinds of things, is we tried the lunch, tried all of those basic subtleties to get to know each other a little bit better, so she can understand my perspective and I understand hers. And then the other thing is, it's a lot of work, and so we have the stresses of, like, I think I mentioned to you earlier, I was up all night working, and so I didn't go to bed till 4:30 this morning. So as a project manager, when new things are being implemented, I have to be there, or have to at least be available remotely to make sure everything is implemented on time and correctly so people can do their work the next day. And so I have the added pressure of sleepless nights and I still have to be in at 8 a.m. because the customers have to be able to work. And so trying to help her understand that balance, because for her it is her 8 to 2, she's a part-time employee, her 8 to 2 demands and all the things she needs to get done in her 6 hours versus all the things I have to get done because I support a system for the entire company. I'm the only project manager for the main CRM system, and now I just inherited additional systems. So trying to get her to understand the balance of my work. So if we are taking in, say we're taking an average of 75 to 100 tickets a day, support tickets, I manage that entire process. If 25 of them are yours, do you really think that I can get to all of yours every day? And that's her expectation. If she submits 25, she wants all 25 addressed and closed by 5 p.m.
So am I hearing that there's a, and I'm not as familiar with the jargon in your industry, but I think, is it SLAs and turnaround times?
Yes, exactly.
That there might be a disconnect between her expectation of the SLA and turnaround time and yours of what is truly deliverable?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
See, people, I think, well, I assume most people bring to their current situation what they're accustomed to in previous situations, right? So in a normal structure for an IT department or project management office, you have the project manager, business analyst, QA analyst, all these different roles so that you can keep that constant flow of work. In this particular organization, I'm the first project manager ever for them. And so they're trying to figure all of this stuff out. So she's applying the concept she learned at other companies to this company, and they're not there yet. And so I sat down with her, not just her, everybody that's a stakeholder. We have our weekly steering committee meetings for the main system, and so we sit down and we prioritize everything. And so it's all communicated in front of everyone. Meeting minutes, a whole Excel spreadsheet of all the projects. We know the priorities. So I'm prioritizing and leading projects, enhancements, and tickets related to just simple bugs and fixes. So if there is no full staff, we have to prioritize everything, and so your expectations can't be the same as with the organization that's fully staffed with developers and all that stuff on site. We just don't have that yet. We will get there, but we're not there yet.
Okay, so let's look at some of the options that you've discussed. Some of them you've said that you've done, and some that you're thinking about doing.
Right.
So what I'd like to do is kind of go through them and talk a little bit about the pros and cons and delve a little bit deeper into some of them.
Okay.
So you had the feedback method, and I think you said that you've already tried that a little bit. So the results from that so far have been?
So mixed results, sometimes okay, sometimes not so well. And so I had to, again, take a step back and make sure I was effectively communicating the feedback. And so there's a lot of, what's the right word? Deflect. So if I say, here's the 2 sheets of paper that indicate this was your original request, these were the agreed upon expectations, and then this is your follow-up email demanding where is it. So I'm showing you the information and you deflect and say it's someone else, it's not you. So I'm going to continue giving the feedback because I don't want it to ever be said that she did not get it. But in terms of it being, in terms of seeing change as a result, I'm not seeing that yet.
Okay. Keeping your boss informed, you're doing that.
Absolutely.
One of the things you said you've not done yet that you're considering as an option is going to HR.
Right.
So what are the pros and cons of that?
Pro would be she would have to cease and desist. If they see what I see, she would have they would have a conversation with her and she would have to immediately stop. That would be a pro for me because I wouldn't have to deal with the stress that goes along with that. The con is I'm brand new.
Yeah.
You don't want to come in the door doing those kinds of things if there's any way it can be avoided. And I've always been, and this is a little pride thing for me, I've always been very good at navigating the people thing. I've never had that issue. I've run into people before who were difficult, right? I've even run into bullies before, but I've been able to navigate it and do well. This person is different. She's very, very different.
How is she different?
She's cruel.
Really?
She is cruel.
I'm sorry you're
It's
experiencing
okay.
that.
Yeah, it's okay.
So she's cruel, and that's a different experience.
Yeah.
And you've given feedback.
I've given her feedback, very direct feedback.
You've kept your boss informed, And what have been the results of doing that so far?
With her, again, depends. Really not taking full responsibility. My boss is very aware, very concerned, and another part of the story is because she did not get this position, my boss found her another position. So the position she's in is a result of my boss helping her find something else. And so my boss is disappointed that in that exchange she is acting this way. Yeah.
And another option that you discussed is that you've tried the lunch and the social.
Tried the social. Really, there's not a lot of time for a lot of that. We've done lunch once outside of the building, a few times inside. One-on-one sessions every week, just so I can review all of her work, all of her outstanding items. And even though I give her an update, the entire company an update on during the steering committee meetings, I still, let's just me and you get together. Let me talk through just your stuff. Let me help you. Added additional training sessions for her team, working through all new security, a whole new security matrix for her team to make sure they can do their work more efficiently. Let me back up. The department she works in is probably 40% of the company, so it's a very large group. And so I think I spend 75% of my time working on stuff for them. Whereas I have a whole other company, part of the company, that doesn't get as much my attention because of the unrealistic demands that her group places on me through her.
Yeah. Okay. So of the options that we've talked about and kind of reviewed, are there any in that list that jump out at you as, yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards this? And then the flip side, are there any that you're like, oh, I really don't think that's going to work, or I really don't want to do that?
HR, the option of going to HR is the only one that causes me pause. The rest of them are pretty much done, touched in some kind of way. And again, not because of fear or retaliation, I'm not worried about that, but just as a new person, I just really, so that causes me pause.
Okay.
It's in my mind because I know it is something that if we continue down this path, that I will have to do, or I will leave the company, right? And so I feel like this opportunity was a wonderful opportunity for me, and I'm not going to let another human move me out of that, right? But at the same time, I prefer to be known as a very respectful, kind, generous, helpful person. And when I feel like another person is trying to help me deviate from that, then I've got to do something, right? And I want to make sure I'm very, very calculating in how I go about doing things, and I want to make sure that she has what she needs, because ultimately I want to service my customer, even if it is a difficult, extremely difficult customer, because that's what I do. So the other part of it is it hurts me, just the emotional part.
Sure. It
hurts me that I am working 70 hours a week sometimes, and I'm in this program at the same time because of this. That pace can't continue, and so I have to make a decision some kind of way.
So there's two things that you said that are interesting. I want to kind of bring up to you and see what you think about them. One is you opened up early on talking about how you can not control her, you can only control yourself, right? And then we've kind of gone through a list of options, and a lot of them are outward, right? There are, I'm going to go to lunch and try to do this with you. I'm going to go to the feedback loop with you. I'm going to do all of these things with you. And, it sounds like you're doing a help me, help you kind of a thing, and getting mixed responses. So, and then the HR would be an external going to someone else. What about going in the other direction? What kinds of options are there about what you can do that's not about changing her behavior maybe as much as changing the impact it has on you? Your behavior, what are some options there, do you think, that you could do to help you?
Initially when I started encountering it, I had to adjust myself, right? Adjust my expectations of her. Just because your title is A, B, C, or D doesn't mean that you are going to live up to that, right?
Mhm.
And so I had to adjust my expectations of her.
Mhm.
And should I lower my expectations of someone? No, but in order for me to not internalize the treatment, I had to adjust my expectations.
Mhm.
One of the other things that I'm trying to do to, I don't know if it's really based on your question, but one of the other strategies I've tried to do is make sure that I have a new admin that started working a couple of weeks ago, starting to get more items, getting him trained to get more items to him to help with the workload.
Mhm.
I don't know anything else internally. I don't know anything else right now.
And when you adjust your expectations
Mhm.
of her, how does that impact you?
It keeps me from taking it personally.
Okay.
Right, because
Mhm.
my opinion would be somebody new coming in, brand new role, company's never had it before,
Mhm.
and this person is running an entire system alone. At that point, I was alone. How would I help that person? How would I treat that person?
Mhm.
So I can't project my expectations onto her just because I would be helpful. I can't necessarily expect that she would be helpful. Right?
Mhm.
And so once I adjusted that, then it didn't hit me like that. But you're not gonna treat me like dirt either. So finding the balance.
Finding the balance,
Finding the
because we
balance.
have that expectations of others to meet our level,
Mm-hmm.
and especially as you go on and the more you learn in the program, and the unfortunate flip side of
Mhm.
that could be kind of seeing what's lacking and having to accept that other people aren't necessarily going to
Right.
respond to the feedback,
Right.
respond professionally,
Right.
Perhaps give her Professor Lang's card and say, contact this man about the program, and maybe kind of do that. So adjusting your expectations
Mhm.
and then offloading some of your work to kind of reduce your stress
Mhm.
level in
Mhm.
doing all of that
Mhm.
is kind of that internal working on
Mhm.
you,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
And then we talked about HR, which will really sounds like you want to take off the table. You're still like that's in your
It's
back
way
pocket.
over there, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we're gonna move that one.
Yeah.
Continuing the feedback and the social. So
Yeah.
it
Well,
sounds
not the social.
not the social,
Not
but the
social,
feedback.
But the feedback, yeah.
But the feedback. So you
Mhm.
kind of get the feedback thing going
Absolutely.
on and all your documentation.
Yep.
And then you have the adjusting expectations and offloading to
Mhm.
the admins.
Mhm.
So if you're weighing those two,
Mhm.
which one do you think is more likely to give you the response that you're looking for?
Neither one.
Neither one. Okay.
Neither one.
Which of those do you think is something that you can do that is going to assist
Mhm.
and at least make things better than they are?
Well, both of them will assist,
Both of them
right?
will.
Both will.
Mhm.
Both will, if nothing else, help the team internally
Mm-hmm.
operate more efficiently. Whether
Mhm.
or not you can ever please outside of the group,
Mm-hmm.
that's not something I can deal with at this time, right? We'll
Right.
just keep on working on getting better,
Right.
improving our quality, improving what we can offer.
Mhm.
The other thing is part of the conversation with my boss is how are we going to structure this department and this team so that we
Mhm.
can truly service the full organization.
Mhm.
And so working behind the scenes on getting more staff in there to do those
Okay.
things. Mhm.
So that's another thing.
Mhm.
So prioritizing, because these are all things that can run kind of concurrently. You
Absolutely.
can continue to do the feedback. You can
Mhm.
continue to throw things off on the admin. Continue to work on your boss with getting the extra work and the structure in.
Mhm.
How committed are you to continuing to do these three things?
Oh, extremely committed. I value what the company stands for,
Mhm.
and so I'm not off-put by this in terms of not now appreciating the company. I'm very
Mhm.
excited still to work there.
Yeah.
It's just this one component, which is unfortunately it's a large component because of the
Mhm.
size of the customer and
Mhm.
part of that organization. But she's just one human. But she's a human that keeps pricking me, and I'm tired of it, right?
Mhm.
And there's so much work to do
Right.
that there's no time for this. You will always have difficult people. And so believe me, I'm not talking about your standard difficult person. For
Yeah.
me to even voice it, and because you don't know me, for
Right.
me to even voice it, it is beyond difficult. It is
Mhm.
abusive. And so it is not my personality to accept abuse.
Right.
That's not my personality.
So the HR's in your back pocket. I'm curious. You have these things that you're working on. HR's in the back pocket.
Yeah.
What for you is the trigger that is going to switch? What is it that would have to happen, or you would have to see or feel for you to then say, HR, you're up on deck. We got to bring that out of the back pocket into the front, and this is what we're doing.
So I'll have a meeting with my boss within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
To say, this is what I need. And based on her response, I'll make my decision.
Okay. Is that meeting actually set up?
It's not scheduled because she's on vacation
Okay.
this week, but I'll schedule it once she returns to the office.
So that sounds like that. I mean, that sounds like something you're committed, that you are having this meeting,
Yeah.
and you will discuss with the boss that this is what we got to do.
Yep.
And it's one or the other. We got to call. We got to make something, and I need some assistance. I need to call on the Calvary.
I'm going to ask her for her support,
Right.
and based on the outcome of that meeting, I'll decide what I need to do.
Okay. And you are fully committed to that
Fully
option.
committed to that.
Okay.
Fully committed. Yeah.
Great. I think that's the true option that you have, because it sounds like you've tried all these other things with mixed results, and at some point, because I've heard a lot of you're not going to continue to let somebody treat you a certain way, that this is unusual and different and a different experience. You can only control yourself and not her, and you've attempted to do all of that, and that it sounds like you are down to. So maybe the HR is the second step after the meeting with the boss, if the meeting with the boss doesn't result in something actually happening.
So my hope is that the meeting with my boss will result in maybe a subsequent meeting between the three of us, or my boss and her superior with a plan. And if I don't get one of those two things, then we'll figure out the HR path.
Okay.
But I'm going to make sure my boss is aware that that's what I'm planning to do.
It sounds like you have a plan, and it sounds like you're committed to doing
I
it.
am committed.
And what? And you've even got a backup. If you go and you have the meeting with the boss, and things don't happen the way you need them to happen, you've got the HR as the secondary plan.
Right.
And then let's project out a little bit. Let's say you have to get to the HR, and that goes through a process, and that doesn't then turn out. Then you've got another session of what are my options.
Right.
Right.
I don't want to say the cliche, life is too short, right? But there has to be a certain amount of respect that an organization makes sure that their employees have. And so I'm trusting that my organization will make sure that not only me, those who come after me or they're with me, that we all have a safe, comfortable work environment.
Right.
So we'll see how that goes.
So you're committed to having the meeting with the boss. Do you have any reservations about doing that?
I do not.
Do not.
I
Fully
do not.
committed.
Fully committed.
So it sounds like you have a solution.
Hopefully it'll play out.
You have a plan.
I do
You have a plan.
Yeah.
You're committed to it. You feel like how likely do you feel that that's going to result in something? If it doesn't, you still have a secondary plan.
Right. Right.
You've tried several things
Yeah.
that you're committed to. No reservations about the meeting with the boss.
No.
So what else? It sounds to me like you're right on track. Are you feeling okay with that plan?
I'm feeling okay, but the possible outcome, if all of this doesn't go well, is me leaving. And so that's the part that I have to, make sure I'm really considering and preparing possibly for.
Right.
And that's not something I want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have come up with at least two options before you get to that point.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's a valid concern. I think it's a valid fear that might get to that point, but you've got a really good organized plan about things you can do in the meantime to get to the point that if you have to decide you're not going to be there anymore, that you really did do everything that you could possibly do to make it happen.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how it looks for me.
Yeah.
But this
Mhm.
is, how are you feeling?
I do.
Any better about the situation? Well,
Right.
not the situation because that's not resolved, but any
Right.
better about your plan?
Right. And, and just being able to, bounce it off someone else and have those
Mhm.
questions asked, so you can really think through. Because I didn't sit down and formulate this, but it was formulated. It just had,
Right.
and I'm a writer and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
now I'll go and formulate that when I get home. Right.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So, is there
Mhm.
anything else you want to talk about around this today?
No, that's pretty much it.
Feeling good?
I'm feeling good. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Awesome.
I think you did great. You came up with a bunch of different options and,
Okay.
and did all that. So
Awesome.
your 2017 class. Thanks, Professor Lang.